It's a great privilege for me to be able to offer to you two gentlemen from South Africa. It's rarely that we get to hear from South Africans about the great crisis our people face in the southern part of the continent. Our first speaker is Philip du Toit. He received law degrees from the University of Pretoria and University of South Africa and a PhD in law from Pacific Western University. He is the owner and managing director of Philip du Toit Attorneys Incorporated and is a very prominent member of the South African Bar. He specializes in land and commercial law, constitutional law, aviation law, and also, perhaps more to the point, violence against citizens. He lectures in law at University of South Africa and is a member of the South African Association of Arbitrators. He is also a private pilot, and one of his hobbies is restoring airplanes. Of particular interest to this audience is the fact that Dr. du Toit is on the steering committee of the Zimbabwe Victims Coalition, and he will speak to us today about the crisis in Southern Africa. If you can welcome Dr. du Toit.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the good Lord for the opportunity that I have to address you here today, to convey to you an issue so burning that I question my own ability to convey the severity of the problems to you. This opportunity today is an answer to our prayers because we have diligently prayed for 2 years for the doors of the outside world to open to us, that we can speak to people who's prepared to listen and to understand our plight. I then would like to specially thank the American Renaissance for the opportunity that they have granted us here today. I feel very small and very humble before you because I have never in my life addressed people as important as you, and then also as intelligent as you. The intelligence levels of Africa are a little bit lower than what you are used to in the United States. So it's easier to get away with hogwash. Today I cannot do it. I would also request your understanding that I cannot today from this podium say to you and tell you what I would really like to. Although I am from a country where we have freedom of speech, it's been interpreted in many ways. And if I today say something that could be interpreted as a form of hate speech, or that I might try and incite you in any other way, I might find myself in very serious trouble. I therefore request you to read between the lines what I am trying to convey to you. Now, if I was French, I'm from French descent, I would greet you and say to you, buongiorno. If I was German, I would say, guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. In Portuguese, I would say to you, bon dia. And in the African language, I speak 5 of them. There's 11 of them in our country being spoken. I would say to you, dume la borre, libon me, ki goedume disa. But I have to greet you the South African way, if you would allow me. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You then start your speech and you discover the microphones fail on you, and then you realize that the problem was at 4, 5, and 6 because you only got to number 3. I would like to thank the following organizations in their absence that I have their mandate to speak to you today. First of all, the family members of close now to 1,600 farmers that have been murdered since 1994. Shame, shame. It is 5 times the number of people sitting in this audience here today. I want you just to try and formulate that in your mind. And they were murdered because of the following crime that they committed. They went farming. They were murdered in cold blood. And I have to show you material today that I hope you have the composition to swallow it and that it won't upset you too much. To us, it has become part of our daily lives. We live with this on a day-to-day basis. We'll get to the issues a little bit later. Secondly, the Agricultural Employers Organization, which I started in 1990. We represent about 8,000 farmers, commercial farmers in South Africa. Thirdly, the National Employers Organization, just over 1,000 businesses. Then the Transvaal Agricultural Union of South Africa, a national organization. My colleague Jack is here. He's going to speak to you directly after me. Then on behalf of the Zimbabwe Victims Coalition, of which I am president, and I am the gentleman that started the action against Mr. Robert Mugabe to take him to the International Criminal Court under the Rome Statute for the atrocities he has committed. Are you aware of the fact that he murdered 32? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That he murdered 32,000 Matabilis. That is now another tribe that is not part of the Shona tribe from which he was or is the leader still. And nothing was said about it. Hence his actions that he has committed recently by disregarding law and order, saying whatever he wants to say about America, the UK and everybody else, and doing what he did to the farmers over there. I speak on behalf of close to 1 million listeners of our Radio Pretoria radio station, where I run a legal program on a weekly basis, and my listeners mandated me to convey their greetings to you as well. 7th, on behalf of 400,000 signatories to the Action Stop Farm Attacks, where we requested government to do something about these farm attacks and the murders. And we were shunned, despite the fact that we collected 400,000 signatures. We couldn't even get an audience with the minister involved. And then I speak on behalf of the general public of South Africa, white, black, Indian, and colored. I would like to point out that as the Zimbabwe Victims Coalition, I also speak to you on behalf of 4 to 6 million, and mostly black people currently dying of starvation. They are taking dry grass and they're cooking it up in water and they're drinking that as tea. That is the closest they can get to any nutrition, and there's no more food left in Zimbabwe. Cunningly, there's very little difference between you and I. And before I deal with that, I want to say something to you. Since we started meeting some of you, yesterday, the day before, and today, I feel so much part of you. I am so much part of your family that if you don't want me, I beg you to please accept me. Because you are... You are wonderful people. I watched people, a lady just now in the lift greeting me, just out of her own. People saying, "How are you?" Not knowing who this guy is. It is wonderful. And the people that I met personally, it's such an honor to have shaken your hand. And I hope that I could do that to all of you sometime today or tomorrow. When I finished school, I couldn't speak a word of English. I only got to know about the English language and a game called golf subsequent to me leaving school, because I really grew up in the Bundus on a farm. It was a cattle and a game farm that my father used to run. Therefore, I must apologize for my accent if it's off-putting or I don't pronounce my words correctly. Please excuse me. It is not my mother tongue. But I said cunningly, there's very little difference between you and I. Because I am from French and Irish descent, and so are many of you. What is the difference? Our ships took different directions. Yours came to Plymouth Rock, and ours went to the Cape of Good Hope. Your future, to date, what you had and what you're going to have is better than ours. And we are very concerned as to the future of our country. But I can tell you something, I have support in South Africa, and I have people standing behind me and behind our organizations, and we are giving them a run for their money. And I am so pleased to hear what I have heard today from the previous speakers. It is heartwarming and rendering to hear all of that. And funnily enough, our problems and your problems are very close to one another. Ours may be a little bit more severe than yours, but it's only a matter of time. Why? You abolished slavery in the 1860s. We never had slavery. We abolished apartheid in 1990. You never had apartheid. You gave equal rights to all in 1964, if I am correct. We gave equal rights to all in 1989, some 25 years difference. We will deal with that time frame and period a little bit later. What happened in our country, and I would like to tell it to you as we experienced it. We came to the end of the road of apartheid, and it was incorrectly conveyed by the media, because it's not hate, H-A-T-E, that we had, it is kite, like in German. It means to be separate, to live apart. And that is what we tried to do, and we started dividing up the country and giving everybody their portion, and we wanted to have a small America. We could not achieve that because of the financial constraints. Time caught up with us, and we were then forced to hand over our country in 1994 on the one man, one vote principle. Contrary to you, we have the numbers against us. And democracy, as we know it today, and as America is satisfied with it, then came into being. I also want to thank Neil sitting there in the middle. It's one of you. We cornered him yesterday because he had a laptop with him, and I wanted to do a PowerPoint presentation for you. And he's been spending last night and most of this morning getting it ready. And I applaud you. Thank you very much, Neil. You're very kind. I hope everything goes smoothly. Thank you. Let's put the first slide on regarding democracy. And please wave if I'm on a different one, because I can't see clearly what is on the screen there. There's a few issues that I would like to deal with flowing from our democracy. The first one, religion. Then we'll deal with property, affirmative action, assault, murder, and rape crime as a whole, and then the job losses issue. So before we start off with them on an individual basis, I would like to say to you, please understand that we as the whites in South Africa are the oppressed minority, because we represent 8% of the country. We run the country's economy. We pay all the taxes, because from a country of 46 million people, there's only 1.76 million taxpayers. The white population consists of a total of 4.5 million people. We have voting power, but we have no voting power, and I think you understand what I'm saying. We have no say, and we have no muscle, because whatever we want, whatever we vote for, is discarded and disregarded based on the numbers game. And if you take people in my country that are totally illiterate, that have no qualifications, that have never worked before, that live on the dole, as they know it in the UK. I don't know what it's called in your country. But so to date, they've never paid 1 penny towards the state coffers. A person like that has got the same vote as me. And just one of them cancels my vote altogether. So you can understand the desperation that we're in. We therefore need a voice to the outside world. And I think we have found it. And that's through you people. Because the warmth and the honesty that I have experienced amongst you is overwhelming. But you know, there's always two sides to a story. Like a gentleman the other day said to me, "But you know, my wife is like a fridge. When we get into bed, she's ice cold." And I said, "Maybe you the deep freeze. You better just have that checked out." So I say there's always two sides to a story. And therefore, please see it in balance. I'm putting it across the way we experience it. The very first one then that we're going to deal with is religion. We are very concerned about the following. This democracy that you see up there, behind that you can put in brackets Islam. Because all that happened is all the portfolios where they need people with know-how, with brain power, they appoint Indian ministers to take up those positions. We were very concerned with this Iraq issue because our government sided with the Arabian countries against you. And let me say this to you today. There's 4.5 million whites in South Africa that are standing 100% behind America, whatever you do, right or wrong. And it is time that we start acknowledging that amongst ourselves and that we appreciate what we still have and use that to our benefit. The Minister of Education is a gentleman by the name of Kader Asmal. And Kader Asmal decided, because the Constitution stipulates that we have freedom of religion, he could not close us down as far as the religion goes. But he then made the following ruling, that we are not allowed in our schools to teach Christianity only anymore. Now, our population consists of Roman Catholic, Methodist, Baptist, Anglican, and Protestant, mainly, the mainstreams. Calvinists. What happened? In December, just before Christmas, he came out with a ruling where he stated that as of now onwards, we're not allowed to do Bible teaching at school anymore. We have to teach our children all the religions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when my children were christened, I made an oath before God that they will be brought up in the Word as I know it as a Christian. I will therefore refuse for my children to be taught about Islam and Buddhism and whatever else you can think of. So I'm fortunately on the school's governing body, and what we did was we changed the school hours. We now have half an hour of Bible teaching, and then the bell rings and then the school starts. And then there's no other religious teaching during school hours. But for how long can we continue with that? It is fine if the teacher teaching them about it is still Mr. McIntosh. But what happens if it becomes Mr. Mashlangu? Then we have another story. I analyzed something and I discussed it on the radio program, and it caused quite a stir in our country. Because I speak the language, I understand it very well. They refer to God as Mudimu, but they refer to the forefather spirits as Badimu. That is the plural for the singular. It's the Moba class. Now, the Moba class is the class of beings, of human beings. There's also a saying in the Tswana language that goes like this: Moto moto kapatu. It means a person becomes a person through other people. It simply means, without your friends, you're worthless. You need friends. You need interaction, which is very true. But then if you analyze that, there is a very interesting aspect coming to the fore. Mudimu is the singular for a forefather spirit, and that they refer to God as Mudimu. Badimu is all their forefather spirits. So they classify him just as one of the forefather spirits. Flowing from that is the message that I want to bring you. I then analyzed that they talk about you and I as Lekgowa. Now when you visit South Africa, it would mean nothing to you because you don't understand the language. Now Lekgowa is the singular and Makgowa is the plural. The Lima class is the class of things. They have three classes. The class of things, the class of animals, and then the class of beings. You and I are classified in the class of things, like a door. Lebati, mabati. And we are Lekgowa, Makgowa. So we are not classified as beings in their language. I thought maybe that is then only in the Tswana language. And I then went and I analyzed all the languages up to Swahili in Kenya. And it's identical throughout Africa. Please take note of that because it's a very interesting aspect to take note of. The next issue that I would like to touch on is affirmative action. They started off telling us in South Africa, if you are white, you stand aside, we will only employ black people. That's now in government circles. Yesterday morning, Jack and I did a press release that we sent through to South Africa because they now passed legislation in this respect, saying that they can even decide whether you can have a license or not. So if you don't conform to affirmative action by taking in a black partner and maybe giving him the majority shares, whatever the prescription is, you will not get a license. You might not be able to trade. We're very concerned about that, and we're going to give them a run for their money on that one. But that is the way it is going. What is very sad is that our white children cannot get bursaries anymore. We have a young man that finished school last year with 11 distinctions, and it was in the newspapers. He cannot get a bursary anywhere. But then they give bursaries to black people that achieved nothing. We are also not allowed to fail them at school anymore. They have to pass. And it was also in the newspaper the other day, they found a grade 8 pupil that couldn't read or write. So they just passed them. They just sent them through school, and eventually they will end up having a matric. And then obviously they can go to university. What's going to happen there, heaven alone knows. It is like the guy that walked into the library saying to the librarian, "Do you have a book on suicide?" And she said, "Yes, but we don't give it out." And he said, "Why not?" "No, because you guys never return them." So it is about the same situation that we faced with here. It is a road to nowhere. If we will look at what is currently happening, it is nothing else but racism in reverse. They openly and by legislation, by decree, say to the white man, "You don't stand a chance, stand aside. We have no more business with you." Do we have to accept it as that? Do we have to live with that? We are saying no. We have a constitution protecting us, and I will show you a short excerpt from it in a minute. The problem is, if we challenge the constitution, we first have to go to the Supreme Court. From there, we must be referred to the Constitutional Court if we can prove that the case has enough merit. And the old question is always, and who's paying for that? Because it's very expensive. I have almost unclothed myself the way I've been carrying on doing cases for people at no charge, But you get to a point where you just can't do it anymore, otherwise you can't make ends meet anymore. This press release was sent out, and we'll see what the reaction is going to be. Please understand what I'm trying to tell you. I listened to the signs and the issues that were discussed this morning, and you will head the same way. It is a matter of time. We heard from the Honorable Paul, from what he was saying about Toronto. It's frightening stuff. What are we going to be like in America 20 years from now? What is the future of our children? We have to be realistic and face those facts with everything within our power. Now, farm murders is the next issue. And I want to request you now, those of you that are sensitive, I request you please not to look. I have taken a very dear friend of mine that was murdered. I took his case. And I have his family's permission just to show you briefly that you can see what they do to people. This man was sitting in his house watching television. They broke in and they murdered him. Hill, can you just go to that slide for us? You will note at the bottom here, the telephone line. He tried to phone the police, but he never managed. The rest of his body is so badly mutilated that I decided not to show you all the pictures that I brought along. If somebody really wants to see them, you're welcome to see me afterwards. Every third day, a farmer is being murdered in South Africa. Are you aware of it? No. Every third day. And the world is quiet. And I'm asking you, please, take note of it. And start asking questions. Exert pressure where you can. Because it has to stop. The 400,000 signature petition that we took to government were more black signatures than whites. But they were just shunned and pushed aside. Farming today is the most dangerous profession in the world. It's been analyzed by people in New York, and there's a whole report on it, that it is the #1 most dangerous profession to farm in South Africa. In '94, we had 56,471 farmers on record when we had the election and President Mandela took over. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have 35,000 farmers left. And the 35,000 farmers are feeding a nation of 46 million, plus the countries around it, up to about 100 million. If we go out the back door, it is just another problem that will be dumped on America, and it will be coming out of your pockets. And that is why we have a duty to see to it that we stay and we carry on farming, and that this situation gets under control in some way or another. And I ask you, I beg you, I plead with you for your help and assistance, thoughts, ideas, plans, prayers in this regard. There is a video that I would like to show you. And if you would allow me to step down for a minute. I know my time is very limited, but I would like you to see this. We will show the video now, and then I will continue. Thank you.
coffin. And a teenage boy crying out for his mother. Overwhelmed by emotion, a family member faints at the graveside. In just 7 days, South African farming communities have buried yet another 3 victims of murder. Elsie Swart was killed shortly after her 50th birthday. I feel bitter. She was severely tortured, say her parents. Burned with an electric iron, beaten and then strangled to death. A day earlier, 73-year-old James Twine was buried in another rural town. He was shot dead in cold blood while kneeling down in front of his killers in his farmhouse. My heart is sore. He was a good man, says this farm worker who has lived on the farm since childhood. Members of the South African Police Service are also struggling to deal with the senseless killings.
Most of these people are very old, law-abiding, God-fearing citizens, and murdered in cold blood. Sometimes I can see my own parents. My parents are also very old, and I'm always glad that it didn't happen to my parents.
Superintendent Anton Crawford has been a forensic cop for 27 years, the last 10 spent at the Criminal Record Centre in Witbank, about 100 kilometres east of Pretoria. The cops here have long lost count of the murders they have attended on farms in this province. What awaits them on a call-out is usually a scene of indescribable brutality. Like so many other victims, this elderly couple arrived back home from church on a Sunday morning. In a macabre display, the killers left their Bibles displayed on the bodies. In an outside room, a third member of the family was tied up with wire, then tortured and killed. Scenes like these are difficult to forget, and to deal with the trauma, even the most hardened policemen often need psychiatric counselling.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I normally get flashbacks every day. You always dream about most of this stuff, you always relive it. It's like a video on rewind, it always comes back. But I'm coping, not 100%, but I'm surviving.
Another day and yet another farm murder to solve. This man was killed for a bit of cash, says the superintendent. And for little else, it seems. But what goes through one's mind, seeing brutality like this, day after day?
I would like to get this bastard. I would like to gather enough forensic evidence, but I would like to take him to court, because I want a successful conviction.
But not all policemen are as dedicated. Beatrice Freitas is the survivor of 2 farm attacks. In neither case has anyone been brought to book.
No! These things just die.
The Freitas family immigrated from Madeira to South Africa more than 40 years ago. They established a huge nursery on farmland near the Mozambican border, supplying trees and plants to outlets across southern Africa. Beatrice still tends the beautiful garden, but the house is empty now. 6 years ago, she arrived home after sunset and was overpowered as she parked her car.
As I turned, I just felt this hand on my neck. And so when I looked, there were 4 guys like this. You can't take. I wasn't scared. It's like my mind disappeared.
Beatrice and her permanently disabled husband, Jose, were tied up in the bathroom while the intruders ransacked the house.
Then after a while, they got me up and they left my husband locked in there. Then they asked me where the iron was. I said, it's in the laundry. So off we go to the laundry. Then they started taking my clothes off. And yeah, and that's where 2 of them raped me.
But the rape was only the start of her nightmare.
I happened to have about 2.5 liters of oil, and they took that and they just poured all over me. They connected the iron on the wall, All I remember just lying there and screaming. And it was a couple of kicks and a couple of irons. 25% of my body was third-degree burn. Eventually they took a towel and they put it over my head and they suffocated me. I ran out of breath, and then with my left hand I pulled one of their hands off, and that was certainly not my strength. That's where I say there were higher powers in charge.
The robbers then fled the scene.
So I took a pair of shorts and some top, and I just put over this grease. And I remember when I put the pants on, there were all these skins hanging down. Still today, after so long, when I put pants on, you know, you would like have that feeling. I am a survivor. Victims die. But with the Lord's strength, I'm here.
But 3 years later, the couple was attacked for a second time. Jose died in a hail of bullets. Like the first time, no one was ever arrested. Unsolved cases like these have forced many farmers to hire expensive private security companies. Some, like Mapocho or Matamaha, have an unconventional approach.
We give the criminals medicine. We give them the shambok. We shambok the criminals. They do no more crime.
But for this farmer, protection from a security company came too late. Dan Landsberg was shot dead, arriving home with his wife in broad daylight. Members of the community arrested the suspects soon after, but within hours they escaped from the local police cells. It was then that the family turned to the security company who had offered to track down the killers. And it wasn't an empty promise. Later that same day, they reported back with evidence and photographs of the fugitives. They even had this statement from a previous employee exposing the murder plot. But why had the police not gone to this much trouble?
That's the thing. What worries me? What is taking place? Because they got the information the same day when they finished killing this man.
Criminologist Professor Niels Moorman has published several papers on farm murders, warning that South Africa's justice system is falling apart.
I have indicated that a person has a 90% chance to follow a criminal career without fearing the consequences in South Africa. And I mean, I've proved that statistically.
Moorman is a member of a government-appointed committee that recently completed a report on farm attacks. This police video footage formed part of the evidence before them. An old man's hand resting on the arm of his wife of many years. She raped. Police say probably while he was forced to watch. Finally, with their throats slit, they died next to each other. But despite the obvious brutality and violence of these attacks, South African officials insist that nothing sinister should be read into the ongoing killings. Assistant Commissioner Johan Burger is in charge of rural safety and security in the country.
I mean, for a long time people have been saying that there are political motives behind these farm attacks. And although there are many indicators which would support such a view, the fact doesn't support that. And in none of those cases have we found any evidence of political motive.
The primary motive is crime, says Professor Mark Wellman, Director of the Crime Prevention Centre at Rhodes University in Grahamstown.
They believe farmers keep a large amount of cash in safes and that to pay workers, etc., etc. The second thing is they have weapons, and weapons are a valuable commodity for criminals. And thirdly, they often, not in all cases, but in some cases, they want the vehicles.
Wellman says the same levels of brutality can also be seen in other sorts of crime in South Africa.
As horrifying as those images are, and they are, I mean, we need to be shocked as a society. We need to say, oh God, you know, what do we do about this? But they're not only being played out on farms in South Africa, they're being played out in townships in South Africa, in suburbs in South Africa, in places of work in South Africa. You know, even the graphic images of torture, humiliation of the victim. I mean, these are things that the detectives are coming across every day in their work. And again, it's not only on farms.
Yet statistics paint a different picture.
It seems to me a very troubling statistic that the murder rate of the farmers, poor farmers, is about 4 times as high as it is for the rest of the population.
Dr. Gregory H. Stanton is a retired American professor of law who heads Genocide Watch, the organization that coordinates the international campaign to end genocide. We met him in Berlin, where he was attending a conference in remembrance of the Holocaust. He believes that, apart from crime, there is also another motive.
There is a motive of hatred, that these are hate crimes, that people are tortured, that they're murdered in ways that are dehumanizing.
Not only does Stanton believe farm murders are hate crimes, but he has also recently warned the world that the white farmers in South Africa could be facing genocide. 20 years ago, he witnessed the horrors of the Cambodian genocide.
I realized, I think, from that point forward that I would spend the rest of my life working to stop genocide and to bring those who committed it to justice.
Years later, that's exactly what he did. He was the person responsible for drafting the UN resolutions that created the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Stanton has identified 8 stages of genocide by comparing the history of genocides in the 20th century. He describes it as a process rather than an act that could take many years to be effected.
The third stage is really where you begin the downward spiral into genocide, and that is the stage of dehumanization. It's where you treat the other people as though they were less than human.
A scene like this, he says, should have the alarm bells ringing. This farmer was ambushed at his farm gate, shot in the back and left to die. His vehicle was burnt out and his body displayed with the lights and the number plates.
Days are clearly hate crimes. It's such a symbolic expression of dehumanization. I mean, it's so treating him like a thing.
It is often thought that a whole group needs to be killed before it is defined as genocide, but that is not the case. Stanton says the more than 1,400 farmers killed in South Africa could be classified under the Genocide Convention.
Even if it's only a few hundred individuals who are being targeted, that is an act of genocide under the convention.
But Wellman says he strongly disagrees.
Another important component of that is that it has to be planned, deliberate, systematic. In other words, orchestrated by some authority figure or agency in some way. Now, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that is happening in farm attacks in South Africa.
However, Stanton warns that South Africa has already slipped into the 5th stage of the process, or what he refers to as polarization.
Extremists attempt to drive out the center. They attempt to divide the world into just 2 camps, into us and them.
And from there on, he says, it is a small step to the 7th stage, when the actual genocide takes place, and where the word genocide is used.
People who commit this crime often think, amazingly enough, that they're purifying their society in some way or another. You know, they're getting rid of insects or of some kind of less than human form of life.
A civil war is potentially more likely, says Moorman.
I don't think we are there yet, but I think that we are speeding to that point very fast if the radicals on both sides are not controlled properly.
They'll say that the genocide was really just a civil war, quote unquote, as though a civil war somehow was an opposite of genocide, when in fact many genocides occur during civil wars.
These are the faces of members of the farming community who have been murdered in the past 9 years. But exact figures of just how many have been killed are hard to find.
These statistics are reported
to the Minister of State and Security, and we have to wait for his approval before these statistics are officially released.
When a local magazine recently published a request for names of murdered farmers, its officers were flooded with letters. But apart from that, the most complete information is published outside the country.
I thought that South Africa was a democratic country, and this really it was like a red flag to me. And ever since then, we started publishing these things more and more because nobody else was doing it, or doing it so little, monitoring it so little, that I thought somebody had to do it, and that's why I did it.
In a small Dutch town, we met retired journalist Adriana Stoet, who spent most of her life in South Africa. Now back in the Netherlands, she uses the internet to compile statistics on farm murders in South Africa, drawing from a variety of sources, like policemen and journalists who would like to see their stories published.
Parliamentary reports from parliamentary journalists, just a huge variety. Policemen who really would like to see certain stories published because it would help in the public interest. They can't get them published. Other sources are undertakers, doctors, nurses, a great many dominies, people like that. Just people, ordinary South Africans.
The report that shocked her into action came from Interpol, saying South African farmers get killed at a rate of 313 per 100,000 of the population.
And they're the highest number at the risk of murder in the world. They're the highest. The most dangerous job in the world now officially is to be a South African farmer.
And just how dangerous that job is recently became clear to Adi Vermaak, a fifth-generation cattle farmer in the far north of the country. Adi is on the road to recovery here, but a month earlier he was still bedridden after being shot at point-blank range on a road to his farm. He had stopped to check water levels in a dam when a car drew up alongside him.
I greeted him and I said to Bertolano, and I said to Allah, he pulled a gun on me. And I immediately realized that he was in business. The guy just stuck this gun into the cab of the vehicle and shot me. Point blank, yes.
The bullet went through his body, taking away part of his liver, then in and out of the binocular case next to him and through the seat of his car. It was finally stopped by the floor of the vehicle. The workers on the back witnessed the incident but were not harmed. Levi, the worker on the right, remembers hearing the attackers shouting, "Shoot the dog, referring to Ati.
There is a group of people who says that the revolution is not finished yet because the land has not been redistributed. The injustices of the past must be rectified. But the question is how, and I don't think we should do that through violence and through land invasions. I think we should do it through an ordered process, but the process must go faster.
The sheer beauty of the landscape is misleading. Behind the fertile farmlands live...
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. The time is running out, so we have to proceed. Right. Let's try and reconstruct ourselves again. The next issue that I would like to discuss with you briefly is Zimbabwe. The Zimbabwe Victims Coalition was formed by black and white Zimbabweans in our country that came to see me. I started acting as attorney for them, and then I was elected as president, and we then proceeded from there. Now, in Zimbabwe, 4,000 farmers have been evicted off their farms without any compensation by President Robert Mugabe. Now, if you look at the slide there, on the left, we have Zimbabwe, then Mugabe that took over in 20 years, and we now have disaster, collapse, and famine. On the other hand, we have South Africa with our president, and if we add 20 years to that, we get to the year 2014, and the question is, what are we to be faced with? a very pertinent question. If we go to the next slide, I demonstrate there for you basically Zimbabwe with the man on the left-hand side. I don't like very much mentioning his name. Have you seen The Lion King by any chance? And those of you that haven't, watch it with your children, and those of you that don't have children, find a wife and get married, because we have to multiply. And while we're on that topic, may I say to you American men, South Africa has got the most beautiful women in the world. I promise you, and I will prove it to you. Any one of you wanting to find a wife, Americans are very popular in South Africa. I will put my address on here in a minute, and you take it down. All you have to say is you're with American Renaissance, and you come and visit. I will put you up, and this is an invitation to all of you. You're most welcome. Right. What is happening at the moment? What I wanted to say about that guy on the left, if you look at The Lion King and you look at the horrible lion, what is his name? Scar. Please watch this guy on television and look at Scar in the movie. It is identical. I applaud the people that made The Lion King, because it's got an unbelievable message to all of us. And we have to keep the scars away from our countries, because that's him in person. On the right-hand side is us. We're providing food to them at the moment. What is the position of the South African government? Our president is very quiet, and he doesn't want to say anything about Mugabe. I can tell you a little bit about African politics. Mugabe is his senior, and that is why he doesn't have the authority to say anything. Because in the African hierarchy, our president is the youngster compared to Zimbabwe. And that's why he's keeping so very quiet. But there's other reasons as well. Of course, we will not go into that into detail today. Right. What flows from that? Next one, Neil. Thank you. I give you there a few points to ponder on as to what is going to happen. And I'm saying the world is going to turn its back on Africa, because they're not interested in what is happening there anymore. But you know what is the dangerous thing? It's very easy to do that, but it's coming your way. If you don't watch it, and if you don't step into it now and start doing something about it, you will be faced with the same problems some years from now. I saw this happening in Kenya. I saw this happening in Tanzania, in the Belgian Congo, in the Congo, the DRC itself. I saw it in Angola. I saw it in Mozambique. I saw it in Zambia. I'm now seeing it in Zimbabwe, and we are the last stronghold. And where do you think it's going to go from there? Not into the sea. It's going to flow to other continents, because there is a strategy that these people are following that we must analyze very carefully and decide what we're going to do about it. 4,000 farmers lost their farms. Is that very serious? Yes. But even more serious, 150,000 black farm worker families also lost their jobs and their homes. And today the war veterans are sitting on those farms waiting for something to happen, because they're not producing anything, because there is no tractor and no diesel and no know-how. They were living off what was there, and it's now finished. There's nothing more. Now they're killing all the game that they could find in the game parks and farms. And once that is done, then it's done. What are we doing about it? If you look at all of those, the one at the bottom, loss of skilled labor due to Henry IV. Sorry, it's an H and a Roman 4, of course. That's what we call it. It's a royal disease. But of course, when you're in the South African Parliament and you get the disease and you die from it, then they say it's a blood disorder. But we all know about it, and it's quite serious. So the war veterans must now tell us what they're going to do to feed the Zimbabwean people, because there is nothing more. We can switch to, I'm saying the government must change its approach, and we are forcing their hand in this regard at the moment. I wish we had the support from the outside world to really do so, and I trust that it will be flowing from this today. Let's switch to property quickly. Neil, I have to skip. I can't go into detail on everything we planned. I just wanted to give you a feel of what the Constitution says. That no property may be deprived from anybody without an order of court, and no arbitrary deprivation is allowed. Now, if we turn to section 25.3, can you go there? Is it there? Yes. Then it states there that it can be done under certain circumstances. But it then refers to law of general application. And switch for me to section 36.1. And you can see there, I'm sorry, but I can't take you through all of this. I wish I could give you the full picture. But section 36.1 must be read together with 25.3, and it says, the rights of the Bill of Rights may be limited only in terms of law of general application to the extent that the limitation is reasonable and justifiable in an open and democratic society based on human dignity, equality, freedom, taking into account relevant factors including, and then it deals with quite a few issues. Now what they're doing at the moment is they're saying, we make law of general application that we will now take 30% of your land. And that is what we are faced with at present. Jack will deal with that in more detail, so I'm skipping this. And he will do it right now as soon as I'm done. They are justifying their right to take away commercial farmland from commercial farmers. And I released a book, and I only unfortunately have a few there. There's about 16 left, but I printed order forms for all of you if you want to order it. If you read this book, you know all about what is currently happening and how they're going about this, and then you can start doing your own planning. The Great South African Land Scandal. I released the book last week, Thursday, at a media release. Government was up in arms. It was a bomb that I dropped in South Africa and then very cleverly left for the United States. But I'll face the consequences when I get back. I was phoned yesterday morning that the book is now the bestseller of the bestsellers in South Africa. They never had sales like this. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If you need to convert anybody to try and understand as to what's going on in South Africa and what might be coming your way, this is your book. And I wrote it in a manner that if you open it and you read one page, you will want to read the rest. You will not put it down. And what is so beautiful, and this is what I'm so excited about, I have a perception in my mind that I want to convey to you today, and I hope you buy it. And the proof is in the pudding, what I'm going to tell you now. The time has come for you and I to find out who you and I are. That you and I start supporting one another in whatever we do. Thank you. The time has come that we need to know what are we all busy with and start strengthening one another. I will rather pay you more than what I would buy from an Islam Muslim and get a little bit of a discount. This book cried out to be written. And I touched a nerve because the South African government is highly upset about it. As I say, I throw a stone into the bush and the dog is howling badly. And what we are starting now in South Africa, and I see some of you are wearing, I don't know what you call it, a little, help me. There we are. Either on your shirt or your jacket, we're doing the same. We're busy designing one now that we can identify one another in South Africa. We put it on our business windows, on our motor cars. If my car's broken down at the side of the road and one of my people passes me and he sees the sign, he will not go, he will stop and assist. And we are starting this issue where we start supporting one another. And I hope that you would do the same. I am going to... I need to tell you that I'm authorized to tell you on behalf of very important people in my country, but it's our people with white skins, instructed me that we have to start our own bank and our own insurance company amongst our people. And if anybody in the audience can assist me in that, because it concerns licensing, etc., then please talk to me afterward. I need your assistance and help very badly. But to prove to you what I'm saying, just last night I found a promoter and a publisher for my book here in the United States. Peter Gemma, and he's a real gem, and James Sanchez are the two gentlemen that are going to do this for me. I applaud them. I applaud them, and so do you, and I'm grateful. And I think we must now make this our business and our strategy and our policy. I have a proposal that I want to put on the board. Please think about it and let me know. But I'm the kind of person, you talk to me once and then I go ahead. I don't talk a lot and I don't need a lot of discussion about it. I make a proposal to you that we form, no, not that one, the heritage, the previous, there we are. That we form a Renaissance Institute. And there's three things that are flowing from that. Number one, we start attending to white children in South Africa that cannot get bursaries and that qualify to get bursaries, that they can study further. They can come and study in the United States, whatever is possible, whatever you can do for them. The second one is welfare. I have a family that I met last week in Pretoria. The husband lost his job because of affirmative action and he was placed basically in a state of bankruptcy. He was sequestrated. They lost everything. They ended up in a house in Brooklyn and Pretoria. They have no furniture. They only have clothing and the beds they're sleeping on. They have no income. They have nothing. 5 beautiful, well-mannered children. We need to put them back into the business stream. That is the second issue. The third one is we have to set the example for the South African government as to how land reform should be done. Not the way that I prove to you that it's been done in this book, but a proper way that we can take a farm and do a proper redistribution where those people can then be on their own, be independent, and make a contribution to the economy. I need investors with time, talent, and finance. And I suggest that we get the Renaissance Institute, because it will be named after you, to form a committee here that we can take it from there. My dear sir, I'm finished, but you must deduct the time that they were clapping hands. I've got another minute. There's another minute. These issues are so important, I wish I had more time. The last issue that I would like to raise, ladies and gentlemen, we have the radio station where I have the program that I'm running on a weekly basis. You know what happened? The government appointed a board that now decides on who gets licenses or not. And our license has been turned down. We have to stop broadcasting. We're going to take them to court, we're going to fight them. But unfortunately, every time it's costing money. So we have to start our own bank and insurance company. Lastly, I would like to invite all of you. You're welcome to come to South Africa. We have many friends out there. They will take you and show you the country, entertain you. You can go hunting, you can do many things at far lower rates and costs than when you do it through travel agents. We will take you to places that are safe because we know where it's dangerous, where you should not be going to. And for that purpose, while the chairman is cutting me off, I will leave that on the overhead there, that you can write down my details in order to get in touch with us and take it from there. I hope that something will be flowing from this. I thank you for the opportunity that I could address you. I applaud you as the wonderful people in America, and with your permission, I'm going to tell the whole of South Africa about you, specifically you, because I never thought that people like you still existed in the United States. Thank you very much. The order... Thank you. A few of you that are lucky can still get the books there, and then the people that can't, the order forms will be distributed, and then you can place your orders and hand it in. Thank you, sir. Those of you handing it in can save the bank charges. Jared, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Must I sit down?
Yeah, you may sit down. Oh, we're okay? Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Du Toit. I think we've all gotten the message that we are in this struggle together. We are one people, wherever we live, what continent we're on. We are one people with one struggle.